everyone. So what happened was the tax bills went out, and apparently a spot check of certain tax bills, including my own, revealed somewhat of an inconsistency. The inconsistency is when I calculated my own tax bill, it turned out that the tax increase was actually less than 9%. Actually, it was more in the area of approximately 5%, which was very curious since I had done nothing to decrease my assessment or increase my assessment. I had the same level assessment. So what happened was there were a couple of more checks. There were spot checks on other tax bills. And curiously, it turns out that when one views your tax bills, and I'd encourage everyone out there to look at their tax bills, if you had a steady assessment, if you did not improve your premises, or if you did not grieve your taxes, if there wasn't some change like that or a modification, what happens is look at your tax bill, and there's a certain formula. I'm going to ask Lori Bell, who's here, just to cite the formula since I see her here and I'm not good at that. But what happens is you're going to find that the tax increase, which was 9.98%, which has been cited by Councilman Yee and Supervisor Wrights as being sometimes 10, sometimes 12, what it really comes out to being is approximately 5%.
It's not true.
Now, let me tell you how that comes about. So that I'm not...
It's not true. I have calls about the 7, 8%.
I'm learning from the supervisor. 5% is what we're talking about. Your average home in the 373 range, you'll be paying approximately $2.17 a month. That's what the new budget's going to be.
And let me continue to explain how this comes about. I need to explain how this comes about, and I have the paperwork in front of me, and I'm glad, I'm very happy to say this. Now, of course, I'm still not happy that it's not a 0% tax increase. Understand that there's still a tax increase. The problem is that it's and actually it's not a problem. It's a good thing. The tax increase is approximately 5%. What had happened, and it's somewhat complicated, but I'm going to be able to have
Liz, this is an
this
organizational
paperwork.
meeting.
I'm
Where
going to
does this
have
appear on the agenda?
no,
You need to defend your
doesn't.
10% tax increase.
But it's very important that you
agenda.
hear this.
Then you're out of order.
And I am not out of order, and I'm going to continue to speak to this because this is very important for all of you to hear. Right now, I'll have this paper. I'm going to give this paper to the town clerk. You can see it, the analysis. What happened was that the average assessments, the Supervisor Wright's budget assumptions, what happens is there are certain budget assumptions made in accordance with what an average assessment is for a home. And what happens is that if you use an incorrect budget assumption for that assessment, it will skewer the figures. So what had happened was that the 2009 budget assumption by Supervisor Wrights was $364,000. The correct budget assumption, after you make these calculations and you do the correct calculations, the 2009 assessment, the correct budget assumption was not $364,000. It was $381,363. The 2010 assessment, the budget assumption by the supervisor was $373,529. The correct budget assumption was $372,289. So essentially what happens is because now you're working with the correct budget assumption, the change in the assessment was negative 2.38%, and what you end up with is a percentage increase of only approximately 5%. It's actually a little bit less, but let's just say it's 5%. So in essence, what happened is by using an incorrect budget assumption, average assessment, you ended up with a 9.98% increase. And this is factual, this is mathematical. And what I want to do is encourage everyone out there to take your tax bill, all right? I'm just going to ask Lori Bell if she knows, if she can just tell me the formula. And while she's getting up to the podium, I would encourage everyone out there to get a pen and a paper and write down the formula that Ms. Bell is now going to say for you. And I thank her for being here tonight, because it's very important that you look at your own tax bills, calculate this, and see what the actual increase is in your town tax bill. Now, remember, it's only if you haven't decreased your taxes because you've grieved them, or if you've received an increase in your assessment because you've improved your premises in some way, i.e., if you added an addition, or you changed something, you added a deck, you modified some part of your house, and there was an increase. Please
Okay, we have Lori at the
listen to this
podium.
formula and make sure you write it down and check your own bills.
Lori,
I
go ahead.
encourage you to do that because you're going to find out that the average increase
Please,
is only
we have
about
someone at the
5%.
podium.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Very simply put, the easiest way to figure out how much your town tax increase is, if you dig out last year's tax bill from January, you look at the town portion as it's carried over, because it's a joint bill with your town, county, and your fire district and garbage. If you just take the town portion from last January's bill, you look at this January's portion of your bill, subtract the two, the increase from last year to this year, gives you a net amount increase, dollar increase. If you then take that dollar increase from last year to this year and divide it by last year's town tax amount, that will give you the percentage increase. Now, the average residential property owner should have only seen about $26 a year of an increase, roughly 5%, give or take, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, depending on your property's assessment. But that's the simple math equation. Last year's tax, this year's tax, the difference, increase divided by last year's total town tax amount will give you your percentage increase.
And when I did that, it
Okay.
wasn't 9.98%, it wasn't 12%.
Okay, we heard you.
It was approximately 5%.
The
So
motion
I'm
item
happy.
is motion
I'm
regarding
happy
employee-
that we all have now, we all know that, yeah, now, I'm obviously not happy that there's a tax increase, by no means. Next year, we're striving to get to have, once again, a flat tax increase. But what I'm happy to report is that what we thought was pretty bad isn't as bad, and certainly I'll be happy not to hear 9.98% misquoted as 12%.
Thank you.
And the reality-
the folks who have called me, who have protested their tax increases significantly in excess of 5%, will not be fooled by this. But go
Please
ahead.
name those people.
Well, I
So
would,
you could increase their tax assessments and
No,
retaliate?
actually,
I
no.
don't think so.
What I want to do is
I think
name
I'll
them because
protect
I
those
don't
people.
believe there are such people. I'd like to see their tax bills because I actually
Bob
calculated
has
my
the
tax
floor.
bill.
Okay, Liz. Bob
and
has the
just to
floor.
add to that, and the reality is, we have a chart here that if anyone wants it, I'll be happy to share it with you, but the town of Southeast has the lowest taxes of any town in Putnam County. No question about it. We pay less in town taxes than county taxes, and our taxes are in line. And part of the reason there was a tax increase was because of unfunded mandates from the state for the retirement system that we have no control over, and also the difference between the supervisor's budget and ours is that we had to keep the town assessor and we had to keep the receiver of taxes because there was no other option. And we felt that it was important for this town to have a library, although the supervisor and Councilman Yee felt that we don't need a library. So that's the main difference.
Mr.
That's not
Cullen,
allowed.
you're out
That's
of order.
not
You
true.
didn't
That's
have
not out of order. You
Go ahead.
defunded the library.
No, Mr. Cullen.
You didn't defund the library?
No, you approved a tax hike for this community in excess of, now you're saying 5% as opposed to what was 10 to 12%.
It was
So, no,
9.7.
Originally, it was
You
9.7.
know, once again, you're taking the floor from me. I have the floor, thank you. So, when we had our budget vote in September, and we debated it numerous times back and forth, it seems like now that you're out of order and playing games with the community's tax dollars, okay? If it was 10%, then you called it 9.98%. Now you bring it down to 5%. You bring this little poster board. Folks, in your community, this community I live in also, you have a tax increase that was unacceptable in a small town like this. You have taxes from the state government, the federal government, your 911 tax, you pick up any cell phone bill, you have taxes all over the place. You now have a, as they call it, a 5% down from a 10%. You know, no tax increase is acceptable. And if we have to make hard cuts in this community, then we'll do that. But I am outraged that between this garbage contract that you paid over $1 million more, which raises your taxes, that you now pay 5% in taxes is unacceptable. The spending in this community needs to stop. I will continue to be the watchdog. The supervisor will continue to be the watchdog in this, and will not be playing games with the tax dollars.
I agree.
Whether it's, you're interrupting again.
I'm agreeing.
This is not games with the community's tax dollars, okay? We set down, we set a budget, we go with the budget, we have to look at what
Agreed.
this community needs first, that's safety on the roads, the snow to be plowed. We had to make some hard cuts this year, laid off some people, and now you come down and you show a poster board, oh, it's only 5%. You know, people lost their jobs in this community, and it's important. And enough of the fighting around on this town board. We need to work together. We need to stop the nonsense. We should have no tax increase next year. We should not have a tax increase this year, and look for harder cuts instead of playing games on this town board.
Well, the
Okay, no, excuse me, pardon me, folks. The issue on the agenda tonight is item 29.
No, I'd like to follow
Motion-
up on what he said.
Roger,
I'm sorry.
Roger, by
I'm gonna
law,
follow
I
up
chair
what he
these.
said. This
Pardon
is
me,
the right
Roger.
CE budget, okay?
Right. We have a
2.5%
motion
budget.
regarding
Library
employees'
locked.
overtime.
Museum
again-
locked. Assessor fired and closed. Tax collector fired and closed. Town government would be crippled. By next April or May, we'd have to go out and hire these people back at a mess that would add another 4% to their 2.5%. These are actual numbers. So thank God the three of us presented a budget that's fair. We had to lay off 5.5 people, which was not pleasant, but we have the library open, the museum open, and the town will function the way you expect us to make it function. You put your trust in us, and we're responding by giving you a fair and reasonable and honest budget. Believe me, we'd like to have it zero.
If you like to continue this, if you like to continue this debate regarding, if you like to continue this debate, if you like to continue this debate regarding the budget, which should have been debated back in September, fine. If your budget from a 10% is down now to a 5%, and our budget, as you call it, was at 2%, then our budget would have been in the negative figures. That's not the debate this evening. The debate is to stop the nonsense on this town board and stop the wasteful spending.
I agree.
And
Let's stop the nonsense.
Right. So when you come in here to try to defend your tax hike and your tax increase, good. You should defend it.
Now, just remember,
No,
though,
pardon me,
We just
Liz.
wanted to make sure
I'll
everyone
speak
knew
to
what the
Roger's point.
reality of the tax
You see
increase
there
was.
behind him, the 2.5% purported increase in my budget. That isn't true. My budget proposed a property tax freeze, which was a dollar-for-dollar identical figure between 2010 and 2011 regarding the amount to be raised by taxes. That's why it's called a property tax freeze. Only in the town of Southeast, as far as I've been able to ascertain, is a property tax freeze characterized or mischaracterized as, you see it right there, a 2.5% purported increase. Now, we are through the looking glass with folks who have voted, in Roger's case, for the 2010-2012 garbage contract, which went out to an $857,000 higher bidder, who is and was a client or a former client now of Senator Liebel's law firm. That is outrageous on its face. That points to serious matters. And for Roger to throw sand in people's faces and people's eyes regarding a tax freeze is a second outrage.
no, it's
Now,
what...
the item before us is
No,
No,
I'm
no,
gonna
no,
let you
no,
get
no.
away with that.
No.
regarding
What-
the
You come at us, we have a right to
What is being-
respond to you.
The sand that is being thrown in your eyes is the fact that the chief financial officer for the town of Southeast used an incorrect figure, which ended up showing that you had an increase of 9.98%.
You're out
And
of
that's
order.
the sand in the eyes. The sand in the eyes
That
is
isn't
that your
true, Liz.
chief
You're out of
financial...
order.
It is true.
Liz, now you're repeating
And
yourself.
everyone out there
You're
needs to
incorrect.
look at the mathematical
With respect,
calculations.
Councilwoman,
Mathematical
you're out of order,
calculations. I am
and
not
you're
out of
incorrect.
order.
You're out of order.
I am not.
And you're
I am
factually
telling you all that
incorrect.
factually, it was an incorrect figure. And that is why, on top of everything else, the figures are wrong. We were working with a figure provided by the supervisor that was wrong.
Liz,
So
we got-
therefore, you have a problem on top of, and I'll just recollect everyone to the fact that by the end of September is when we first were finding out from the town
Liz,
accountant,
that
not from
isn't
the
true
chief
either.
financial officer,
There was a
that we
caution
had a
issue
problem.
from
And
the
now
New York
we
State
find out
Comptroller's
that
office.
now we find out that a
Which I
figure
raised
that
and
was
informed the
being
board.
used, I feel like I'm singing in sync with someone.
Well,
Now we know
I
that the
informed the board
figure
in
that was
June, so
being
you need to be
used, and
factually
he did
correct.
not inform the board in June, but what I will tell
most
you
certainly did. We
is
have
that
the
this is
footage.
an incorrect figure. As far as